Hi, Aqua Roomers. Time for chapter reading. So, yesterday we started our new chapter reading book, Little House on the Prairie. And as you know, Laura and Mary and Ma and Pa and baby Carrie are leaving the big woods. I know. It was kind of sad. When we read yesterday, it was a great picture. There they are, saying goodbye to everybody. There's the little house. But I wanted to show you this picture and also show you this picture. It's the same wagon. This is when Pa took everybody to town to the store in Pepin. And the only difference is he has built a cover for the top of the wagon. So that's why it's called a covered wagon. So they're all bundled up and they're headed across. You know what? Before I start to read, I want to show you where they're going. Ready? Here's my map. This is New England where we are. The big red one is Maine, and then the purple and the dark green are Vermont and New Hampshire, and right below that is Massachusetts. But then we're headed west, and we go further and further, and Laura and her family are in Wisconsin. The big woods are in Wisconsin. And in our chapter book, they are just crossing over into Minnesota. So do you see this? This is a huge river. It goes and, oh my goodness, it goes and goes and goes. And this is the Mississippi River. All right? So, lots of adventures ahead. And when we started to read, when we finished reading yesterday, they had just crossed Lake Pepin, the big lake. And Laura heard the ice start to crack in the middle of the night. She was scared. And Ma woke up and said, "Go to sleep, Laura. It's only the ice cracking." The next morning, Pa said, "It's lucky we crossed yesterday, Caroline. Wouldn't wonder if the ice broke up today. We made a late crossing, and we're lucky it didn't start breaking up while we were out in the middle of it." "I thought about that yesterday, Charles," Ma replied gently. Laura hadn't thought about it before, but now she thought, what would have happened if the ice had cracked under the wagon and the wheels had all gone down into the cold water in the middle of the vast lake? "You're frightening somebody, Charles," Ma said. And Pa caught Laura up in his safe big hug. "We're across the Mississippi," he said, hugging her joyously. "How do you like that little half pint of sweet cider half drunk up? Do you like going out west where Indians live?" Laura said she liked it, and she asked if they were in Indian country now, but they were not. They were in Minnesota. It was a long, long way to Indian territory. Almost every day, the horses traveled as far as they could. Almost every night, Pa and Ma made camp in a new place. Sometimes they had to stay several days in one camp because a creek was in flood and they couldn't cross it till the water went down. They crossed too many creeks to count. They saw strange woods and hills and stranger country with no trees. They drove across rivers on long wooden bridges, and they came to one wide yellow river that had no bridge. That was the Missouri River. Pa drove onto a raft and they all sat still in the wagon while the raft went swaying away from safe land and slowly crossed all that rolling, muddy, yellow water. So look at that. See, there's no bridge, but there's a big raft. And Pa just drove the wagon and the horses and everything onto the raft. And then there's a pole that goes all the way down to the bottom, and he could push off the bottom of the river, and then the big long rope will help to pull them across. After more days, they came to hills again. In a valley, the wagon stuck fast in deep black mud. Rain poured down, thunder crashed, lightning flared. There was no place to make camp and build a fire. Everything was damp and chill and miserable in the wagon, but they had to stay in it and eat cold bits of food. The next day, Pa found a place on a hillside where they could camp. The rain had stopped, but they had to wait a week before the creek went down and the mud dried so that Pa could dig the wagon wheels out of it and go on. One day, they were waiting. A tall, lean man came out of the woods riding a black pony. He and Pa talked a while, and then they went off into the woods together, and when they came back, both of them were riding black ponies. Pa had traded the tired brown horses for these ponies. They were beautiful little horses, and Pa said they were not really ponies, they were Western Mustangs. They're strong as mules and gentle as kittens, Pa said. They had large, soft, gentle eyes and long manes and tails and slender legs and feet much smaller and quicker than the feet of the horses in the big woods. When Laura asked what their names were, Pa said she and Mary could name them. So Mary named one Pet, and Laura named the other Patty. When the creek's roar was not so loud and the road was drier, Pa dug the wagon out of the mud. He hitched Pet and Patty to it, and they all went on together. They had come in the covered wagon all the way from the big woods of Wisconsin, across Minnesota and Iowa and Missouri. All that long way, Jack had trotted under the wagon, and now they set out to go across Kansas. Kansas was an endless flat land covered with tall grass blowing in the wind. You might have fun when you're home finding a map and seeing if you could trace where they went from Wisconsin down to Minnesota, down to Iowa and Missouri, and then Kansas. Kansas was an endless flat land covered with tall grass blowing in the wind. Day after day, they traveled in Kansas, and they saw nothing but the rippling grass and the enormous sky. In a perfect circle, the sky curved down to the level land, and the wagon was in the circle's exact middle. All day long, Pet and Patty went forward, trotting and walking and trotting again, but they couldn't get out of the middle of that circle. When the sun went down, the circle was still around them, and the edge of the sky was pink. Then slowly the land became black. The wind made a lonely sound in the grass. The campfire was small and lost in so much space, but large stars hung from the sky, glittering so near that Laura felt she could almost touch them. Next day, the land was the same. The sky was the same. The circle did not change. Laura and Mary were tired of them all. There was nothing new to do and nothing new to look at. The bed was made in the back of the wagon and neatly covered with a gray blanket. Laura and Mary sat on it. The canvas sides of the wagon top were rolled up and tied, so the prairie wind blew in. It whipped Laura's straight brown hair and Mary's golden curls every which way, and the strong light screwed up their eyelids. Sometimes a big jackrabbit bounded in big bounds away over the blowing grass. Jack paid no attention. Poor Jack was tired too, and his paws were sore from traveling so far. The wagon kept on jolting. The canvas top snapped in the wind. Two faint wheel tracks kept going away behind the wagon, always the same. Pa's back was hunched. The reins were loose in his hands. The wind blew his long brown beard. Ma sat straight and quiet, her hands folded in her lap. Baby Carrie slept in a nest among the soft bundles. "Ow!" Mary yawned, and Laura said, "Ma, can't we get out and run behind the wagon? My legs are so tired." "No, Laura," Ma said. "Aren't we going to camp pretty soon?" Laura asked. It seemed like such a long time since noon, when they had eaten their lunch sitting on the clean grass in the shade of the wagon. Pa answered, "Not yet. It's too early to camp now." "I want to camp now." "I'm so tired," Laura said. And then Ma said, "Laura." That was all, but it meant that Laura must not complain. So she did not complain anymore out loud, but she was still naughty inside. She sat and thought complaints to herself. Her legs ached, and the wind wouldn't stop blowing her hair. The grass waved, and the wagon jolted, and nothing else happened for a long time. "We're coming to a creek or a river," Pa said. "Girls, can you see the trees ahead?" Laura stood up, and she held onto one of the wagon bows. Far ahead, she saw a low, dark smudge. "That's trees," Pa said. "You can tell by the shape of the shadows. In this country, trees mean water." "That's where we'll camp tonight." Of course, they have to have water. Chapter 2, Crossing the Creek. And I think we'll save this for tomorrow. Oh my goodness. Oh, this is a great chapter. All right? So boys and girls, until next time, and if you want, you can look up Wisconsin and Missouri and Minnesota and all the way down to Kansas. That might be fun to follow, okay? So, till tomorrow, boys and girls. Better be here tomorrow. It's really exciting, okay? Bye.